Hello everyone! This video was produced during the Midnight Alpha, as by the time it should release, we should be looking at the Midnight Beta. A top-of-the-head rundown as the story so far presented in the expansion. With that, please keep in mind, massive spoilers ahead. Alpha will be alpha, so things are subject to change. And this is to give you an idea as to, okay, the story is going to come. More details will follow. Deep dives into the zones and the stories and all that will of course be on the channel when it's actually live. This is for those who want an early look. I hope you'll enjoy.
This darkness comes to devour everything. And when it is finished, there will be no more light. Without your aid, we will perish. I beg you, help us.
Our adventure begins with the Midnight intro cinematic, where Liadrin prays to the Sunwell, and the Sunwell performs a miracle. They call in pretty much every light wielder that you've ever known, as well as the heroes of Azeroth. We're all called to the defense of the Sunwell, to the Isle of Quel'thelas. There we team up with Arator, and we go around kicking the Void Invasion, the devouring host. We're trying to kick them off the island, but things are not exactly working in our favor. Not even using legendary weapons infused with the light that was protruding out of the Sunwell is enough to get these behemoths out of here. Like, this is the biggest void invasion Azeroth has ever seen. Xal'atath has the power of Dimensius in the Dark Hearts. He is ready to unleash hell, yet at the same time, one of the things that I'm still very curious about is why doesn't Xal'atath just instantly one-shot us on the battlefield? There are a couple of cutscenes where she is mentioned. She is definitely keeping an eye on the battle. But why is she herself not on the field is something that I'm hoping is going to be explained. Because it can be explained. She might be very cautious. She might be worried about the Sunwell performing some kind of miracle. Like, Xal'atath has seen us in action many times before. She has seen what Azeroth can accomplish. And it would make sense for her to be cautious. I'm just wondering, like, okay, what is the Harbinger doing while we're doing our thing? All the same, we try to push back the devouring hosts. Things are not going too great. When we defeat one behemoth, two more jump out of a portal. We have no other choice but to retreat to the Sunwell. Yet Liadrin believes that this is not the end. Surely the Sunwell has not summoned us all here so that the darkness can consume us. We must put our faith into the light, into the Sunwell. And we perform a ritual. And in response, the light bursts out of the Sunwell. It keeps the void at bay. The day is saved. But our problems are far from over. This is just the start, as the light wielders, they can't keep up this ritual, this casting forever. Xal'atath is still out there. With enough time, the void is going to come back. We need to take action, we need to do something. We need to figure out a plan. Our adventure into Midnight then truly begins. With first off, we go into the revamped forest, where they've pulled in the Ghostlands and they've made the area one. The city has also been updated and is now a beautiful new capital. I've got some videos up flying over the zone if you're curious. The Isle of Quel'thelas is now connected by a bridge with the mainland again. It's absolutely gorgeous. The art team, I don't know how they do it, but every single expansion, they knock it out of the park. In the city itself, we deal with a bit of a political situation. Lor'themar is very concerned about his citizens, and understandably so. Like, the Blood Elves' history is a dark one. They've sacrificed so much. They've already hurt so much before. He is very careful when it comes to his people. But then we have a Turellian, for example. Turellian as a warrior of the light. There's something happening there. The infusion by the Sunwell. Perhaps this Renilush, if this is truly that fated battle between light and void. It's doing something to the warriors of the light. And he is becoming more and more zealous in his actions. As a counter to that, there is his son Arator, who finds himself in the conflux between two forces. There is his father, Turellian of the Light, and he too is a light wielder. He too lashes out and brandishes it against the void. But he also is familiar with the void through his mother. And more building blocks seem to be going towards the idea that Arator is the true child of shadow and light. So Arator is in the middle of that. Then there is Amrik, the leader of the Void Elves, and he really wants to help out. He wants to come into the city, he wants to come close to the Sunwell and figure out a way into the Voidstorm, figure out a path to fix all of this. But then Romaf is like, no way. you guys have been exiled, letting you into the Sunwell, it would only put our magical founder power in danger. You're not coming in. So Umbric is going to do his thing on his own, whereas Muff is holding down. But we are going to need a path into that Voidstorm. We are going to need to figure out some way of taking the battle to Xal'atath. And what I've noticed as I've finished the major leveling campaigns, each time you go back to the city, there's a storyline playing out with Umbric trying to get this done, with Umbric trying to finish their studies, up to the point where he tries to sneak to the Sunwell. And some of these light wielders, low fraction included, they pin him down to the ground and they're about ready to execute him, right? That's how zealous they're becoming in the light. And Lor'themar's like, can you go deal with this political situation for me? And which we do. And at first, they're like, Lor'themar, he's got nothing to say here. This is our Sunwell now. We are not going to listen to the word of Lor'themar. But then there's Anduin Wrynn. And Anduin tells them, like, look, Umbric is part of the Alliance. I'm telling you, let him go. And they do. Now, I have sent obvious feedback to this questline, but, just for the sake of Umbric is very much like, yes, I am a Void Elf, I'm dealing with the Void, but I'm here for my people. I'm trying to help out. From the moment that he found out that the Sunwell was in danger, that Xal'atath was coming for this fount of power, Umbric was there, and he's not letting up. Next to that, in the city, we also learned that Fel is being abused in the city again. And when they announced that we were going to do a storyline with like Murder Row and the use of Fel was going to be very, frowned upon and illegal in their city, my first thought was about warlocks or demon hunters. Like, what do you mean Fel has become illegal? Don't they just use that in regular society? What's really cool is that they actually woven this into the questlines. Like, we see a Forsaken warlock pinned down again by those light wielders, right? And this Forsaken warlock who summoned a Voidwalker, they are like, yo, let me go. I'm just being a warlock. I'm doing my thing here. And this harkens back to some of the earlier developer Q&As where people ask, like, okay, how does society respond to these more darker powers that we embrace, like as a warlock or a death knight or a demon hunter? And the reply was that, you wouldn't see a warlock just summon a Voidwalker in the middle of the city. Like, yes, we embrace the powers of the Death Knights, but you wouldn't find them in your local inn. They'd probably be more in the background, in the shadows, regardless of their intent. For the regular people, these darker dealers are not actually embraced in society. They're more on the darkened side. And next to that, the whole using of the Fel is also frowned upon because they're messy about it. It's not the clean, skilled way of doing things. These are kids or nobles or high society that, in the face of the Voidstorm, in their fear, start to embrace these powers of old, this very addictive and corruptive power. So it's definitely woven in a very cool way as like, oh, okay, this is how a demon hunter responds to this, and this is how a warlock responds to this. I was like, oh, okay, this whole Murder Row scenario actually makes a lot of sense. Going outside into the forest, we are introduced to the major threats that are part of the leveling zones. So for those unaware, everybody starts in the forest, and then you get a choice as to where you want to go. You've got the storyline with Arator, you've got the storyline with the Zul'Aman, and you've got the storyline at Harandar, right? But in this zone, you get a taste of all of it. So part of it is with the Harandar and Orwenya. There's the idea of the Sunwell has been leaking into the ground for many, many years. And where at first they were unable to heal the Death Scar, the light infusion allowed them to get things going, allowed them to put down this beautiful forest. And now with the Sunwell blasting against the Voidstorm, the light bloom is also going out of control. And Orwenya is confused at first because she knows these people. They're from her they're from her area, from where she comes from. And she's like, what is going on here? So we investigate. And eventually we get like, okay, we're going to go and have to follow Orwenya to deal more with this light bloom situation. Then there are the Amani trolls that are coming out of Zul'Aman, as they want the light-infused lumber in order to make weaponry against the Twilight Blade cult. And the Twilight Blade cult is also part of the introductionary questline of 11 to 7. They're basically the Twilight Hammer, except they have Xal'atath's dagger on their banner. They are the ones that follow Xal'atath now, right? But they're basically, if you're confused, like, who are these people? They're basically the Twilight Hammer. They are cultists. They're all about the void. And they are a problem for the Amani trolls. And despite this long history between the Amani and the elves, and not going to each other's countries, this light-infused lumber, these weaponries, it pushes the Amani into coming in. And obviously that leads to conflicts, because elves and trolls mixing up with each other is not a good idea. But at the same time, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? Like, these cultists are a problem for all of us. And then finally, there is the Arator storyline. And as I mentioned, Turelion is becoming more and more zealous, and we follow Arator through this zone. So we follow Arator as he parties with Orwena, he meets up with Umbric and their investigation into the Voids. He meets up with the Amani trolls, and at some point his father is like ready to cut down the Amani trolls, to which Arator jumps in, and his father, in his zealotry, wounds his son. And I thought that ending is like, oh, I can't wait to actually see this ending play out. This conclusion with his son, and seeing how not just the Void is portrayed as this evil force, right? But also the light, if you go too far in its extremes, can be just as evil. I really like that, especially with those blood ties. So that in essence is the first zone. And we can see, okay, these major threats are lined out, and then you can pick and choose where you want to go. Say that you go for Arator, then you follow a quest line in which you, surprisingly, you party with Arator. And in this one, there's Alonce's Fall, and we learn more about the history of the Light. So we go to Light's Hope Chapel, where the undead are on the attack, and we deal with these relics of the past that show Arator that the Light is more than just, smiting the wicked and taking vengeance. There's also these whole other aspects that these heroes embrace, like a Marat and like a Four Dragon and all that. And then we take Arator into the Scarlet Monastery, where he learns more about the Light's conviction, how it responds to conviction, how the Light does not really have a morality when it comes to using its powers. The Light doesn't care if you think it's being used for good or for evil. The Light responds to conviction, which we've seen amongst the Scarlets, right? And then we go to Blackrock Mountain. Side note that I forgot to mention in the original recording, we also go to the Arathi Highlands, where there's a bit of the Sunwalkers, and again, a different mindset to how you can best utilize your connection to the Light. As well as we empower those that are doing the ritual at the Sunwell. This is a big part of why Alonces wants our help to begin with. It's not just to help out Arator and learn more about his connection to the Light and what the Light means on Azeroth. It's also so that we gather relics and empower the paladins and the priests that are keeping up that light beam, that are keeping the Void at bay. Now, I do remember that in the announcement they mentioned that we were also going to Strefholm. I'm wondering if that's still a part of the chapter that needs to put in there. Either way, we then end up at Blackrock Mountain, where there's like a reunion of the Sons of Lothar and also Eitrigg. I'm really wondering if they made Eitrigg like this honorary member of the Sons of Lothar. I'm not sure. They also made mention that Eitrigg was part of the Dark Horde, which I've definitely reported as a lore adder. Either way, the Dark Horde has returned. And for those who are like, what do you mean the Dark Horde has returned? Who are these? The Dark Horde was like the Horde that you dealt with back in Classic. And Moira has actually manipulated the Horde, Thrall's Horde, to come into the mountain to clean it out. And then the Dark Irons, they set a base in the mountain. And then Garrosh gave amnesty to any Dark and Horde members that were still out there. They could join the Horde if they wanted to. So the Dark Horde storyline, to my knowledge, was done. But apparently not. Apparently they are still recruiting and they're still, we're against Thrall's Horde and all the good stuff. I don't know. I don't know why this choice was made. I'm guessing that they wanted something related to the Sons of Lothar from back in the day or something, but Dark Horde is definitely a choice. But yeah, we clean out the mountain, and then we ended with a cutscene where apparently we're going to see Turelion at the end of the war between the Alliance of Lordaeron and the original Horde, right? Where Enemy Lothar is struck down, and Turelion finds his connection to the Light, and then all of that plays out. The video needs to be implemented. And then Arator picks up his father's son. We go to the Arcantina, which is this new mechanic, this new place where you can hang out, right? Where apparently lore NPCs are going to show up. Again, Eitrigg makes mention of being a member of the Sons of Lothar. We have a few drinks. And that is Arator's storyline so far. Like, he learns more about his family. He learns more about the Light and its role in this world. And he picks up his father's shield in the defense of. Right?
Do not lose faith.
So that is one. And if you have already seen the intro quest line from the PTR, then you've also now realized that not only do we have the intro quest connected to the Windrunners, we also have a bit during the Sunwell invasion, the starting scenario that's connected to the Windrunners. And now this quest line is all about Arator and the Windrunners. So do hope that you enjoy the Windrunner family, because it's definitely playing a part at the beginning. Then the other zone that you could pick for is Zul'Aman. And Zul'Aman deals with the grandchildren of Zul'jan. Zul'jara and Zul'jan from the top of my head.
The elves took my eye.
But I was happily surprised. It was more a situation in the direction of Durotan and Gnar back in Wars of Draenor. I would describe it more in their relationship more in that way. Like Durotan and Ganar, they both just had a different vision as to how they should deal with the clan and the future for the people. Neither one was particularly wrong. It was just that, we favored one over the other. One was more, take it cautious, go slow, whereas the other was more like we need to take action and we need to, go do something. I would describe their relationship more in that direction than the scenario that I was fearing for. And what happens in this one is that Zul'jara, she learns more about the history of her grandfather, because Zul'jan and the Amani in the past, they abused the power of the Loa for the sake of the Amani trolls. And there's a lot of history to go in there, which we're not going to do right now. I definitely have a video up on the story of the Amani trolls. But in essence, Zul'jara is not fully aware of what happened with her grandfather back in the day. So she now needs to figure out a way to defend her people. And the suggestion is made, well, what about embracing all the power of the Loa again? So we go around the zones, we learn about the Loa, we go through the trials. If you have played the story in Zandalar, a lot of similarities there, right? So we go around, we gather the Loa, we gather our forces, and eventually we take care of the Twilight Blade, and we bring together the Amani trolls as we do. And we get them ready for whatever is coming next. Now, the brother, in the end, does have a reflective moment. And as his sister has gone through this whole journey of reconnecting to the Loa and going a different path to the grandfather, he is pondering about this empire of old that they had. And he's pondering about, is this truly the way for their people, or should they go do something else? And I'm wondering if this is going to connect to an upcoming storyline, and a lot of people are wondering this, by the way. There's already been explorations as to, what is this older empire about? What is this continent going to be used for? And it's most likely going to be patch content in the direction of, perhaps, once upon a time, there was still the Kefrax that the Amani killed here and then built a temple city upon. And throughout the storyline, there is no mention of that Kefrax at all, at least not as far as I've seen. So I'm wondering if that is going to become part of the story later down the line. That link to Xal'atath in the past is going to be brought in, because if they don't, I'd be really confused, because it seems to be like such an easy goal to make, right? Harandar, the place with Orwena and Harnir, and this zone most likely was supposed to be part of the War Within storyline, but they've split up the War Within in like the World Soul Saga, they've moved some stuff around, and now the zone has been added with this one. Like I mentioned before, the light bloom, so the light infusion is causing trouble. And we go down and we get to meet where Orwena comes from. And as much as this storyline in its entirety is from the top of my head, and please keep in mind, Alpha will be Alpha, a lot of the Harnir storyline is also up for interpretation. Because there are... Okay, I should explain this better. In the zone, we find runestones and like old paintings that talk about the history of their people. And in the zone, we jump into these paintings, which is in essence, they describe it as we jump into paintings and we learn more about their history. But in essence, it's the Azeroth memory mechanic that we had in the War Within. So you click on it and all of a sudden around you, the world changes and you go through a storyline. And through that, we learn a lot about the history of the Harandar. And this is what I pieced together so far. But again, please keep in mind, subject to change, right? Once upon a time, Azeroth used to live here. Their goddess used to live here in the cradle, and for some reason she was stolen away and she was taken away. Potentially she was moved here by the Titans to put her in that defense matrix that they were talking about, because the influence of the old gods was still messing with her soul. They decided to put like a cage around her. But that is potential. We do not know why she's gone. According to the Harandar description on their allied race page, the goddess was already gone by the time that they arrived. And they were just drawn there by the sound of her song, by the sound of her music, in a similar way as to how all the roots of the world trees in Azeroth are also drawn here. They are drawn to the power of the cradle. So we see the roots, the world tree roots of a Norddrassil, and as an Amir Drasil, and a Teldrassil, and these world trees are winding down here. And let's not go nerdy and go talk about how the roots actually grow sideways of trees, because these ones are being pulled down here by that essence in a way, like the remnant of Azeroth's soul, I would say. The Harandar themselves are hard to place. Like, were they dark trolls or were they something else entirely is hard to say. But they describe on one of the tablets that they looked on the other trolls as like lesser races, right? And they got the tablet where they look at some of the trolls going up to the stars, which my interpretation is that they saw some of the dark trolls find a way to the Well of Eternity. They will become the Night Elves, as we know them as. And then these, the Harandar, be it Dark Trolls, be it something before the Dark Trolls, they did not go to the Well of Eternity. Instead, they heard the voice of the goddess, which guided them downstairs. Similar to how we have a play with the Irvin, where they try to follow the voice of the goddess, go downstairs, and they're blocked by the Nerubians. The Harandar, they pushed those Nerubians out of the way. They got further and further. There's a little bit of void corruption there, until they found a way to this place. And I think under the influence of the remnants of Azeroth's soul, that is how they evolved into these beings. But again, I think, right, to be decided. So living here at the Cradle has them very much connected to the world soul of Azeroth. Similar to how the Blood Elves are connected to the Sunwell, right? And the power of the Sunwell is like infused in them for generations when they're born. Like their connection to the Sunwell is very, very strong. In a similar way, the Harandar have a very strong connection to Azeroth, which is why Orwena, she heard the voice of Azeroth, the call, the journey that pulled it away, much earlier than I expected. She heard it before the burning of Teldrassil. So she heard that voice call, ending of Legion-ish, before Battle for Azeroth. That's when she heard the call to go on a journey to figure out what was going on, right? Speaking of the burning of Teldrassil, by the way, in one of the Q&As, we asked them, like, is this going to play a part? Is the destruction of Nordrassil going to play a part? Is the burning of Teldrassil going to play a part? Like, these Harandar were not locked away. They actively decided not to interfere. And interestingly enough, during the interviews, they said, like, no, that's not really going to be a part. You are going to know that the roots are connected, but dealing with this, not so much. I'm happy to report that the interview answers are wrong. In a similar vein, how the interview answer as to, are the Naga on the beach was wrong, because there are Naga on the beach. In this case, they actually weave it in a really cool way. So what happens is that the caretaker of Teldrassil, they eventually find out that the roots start to burn. But by the time that the roots start to burn, the tree was already far too gone. And that moment is actually what pushed them into thinking, like, okay, our way, the Harandar's way of not interfering with what's happening, it's wrong, right? Perhaps we should take care of more than just the roots. What about the creatures that live in the trees? What about the world up above? And this mindset, this connection to Teldrassil, actually, it gave them a great motivation. The roots are still smoldering and burning, right? So that is still going on. And the caretaker of Teldrassil, it's not like they can just skip over to another tree. Like this commitment is forever. There's a really, really beautiful quest line where they're still taking care of the roots. So they've actually woven that into the storyline. Speaking of the Naga, by the way, now that I think about it, there's a side quest up above where the Naga are gathering power. A potential link to Zul'jara in the future, maybe. But down here, we learn about the Harandar, and we learn about how dead set they are in the ways, and we learn about how they don't interfere. There is also a very interesting mention of the Rift of Aln, but we'll get to that. So we go around the zone, and we ask them to help out, and the elders are very much like, no, that's not what we do. Learn about our people, learn about our ways, that's not what we do. But eventually you find out that the Lightbloom has also made its way here, massively. It's become a huge problem. It's overgrowing, it's quickly getting out of control. Think back to the story of Warlords of Draenor with the Everbloom. That's basically this storyline. The Everbloom that came over with the Magar Orcs, by the way, in the recruitment scenario, they've not been used for this storyline. Now, I don't know if that is because they don't want to make the reference, because, it's very similar in storytelling, or if that's going to be something for later, or it's forgotten about, I do not know. So far, they're not part of it, right? We did spot a Janissar, but that might just be a model thing. Either way, once the Lightbloom shows up, we need something to fight back, and we find out that there's something that they have which is called Aln Dust, and this is connected to the Rift of Aln, which in turn is connected to, again, interpretation. Here's mine. I think that the Emerald Dream is dreamed up by Azeroth, that when Azeroth's spirit was slumbering here, that she dreamed of the Emerald Dream. And so here we have the Rift of Aln, which is the starting point of the dream in the physical universe. And then the place where you fought against Xavius in the Emerald Dream, that is the Emerald Dream side of things. For reference, by the way, for those who are wondering, like, okay, where exactly is this place, this Harandar place, Harandar? I think just somewhere underground, because they think that all the roots are growing down here and like water is streaming down. I think it's just underground somewhere. It's not its own little pocket dimension. Interpretation. Right? So the Rift of Aln, Aln Dust, nightmares. With the goddess pulled away, nightmares are manifesting, and one of these nightmares is actually going to be a raid boss. So with the nightmares manifesting, it's not good that the spirit is pulled away here, and some of the Harandar actually disconnect themselves from the voice of Azeroth. For some reason, being connected to the voice makes you susceptible to these nightmares, and makes you susceptible to fall to the darkness of this Rift of Aln. But some of them have figured out rituals to actually disconnect them from the voice and be completely alone. Like, you gotta imagine, again, like the voice of Azeroth is so inherently part of their culture that this is a massive sacrifice. But they do it to keep their people safe, right? And we go around, we gather this dust from the Rift of Aln, we gather this Aln dust, and that is our ticket to fight back against the Light Bloom, the Light Infusion, because it allows them to regain control. Then we go up above, where the Light Bloom in the forest is going out of control again. We do this whole ritual, and we prepare to blow up the forest and burn it all down, because, you know, life has taken root in this forest before. Perhaps it will happen again in the future. But thankfully, we don't have to make that ultimate call, because the Harandar make the decision to break protocol, and they join us in this battle, giving us the chance to fight back against one of their own, who has actually embraced the Light Bloom. We fight back against them, we save the forest, we set up a portal to Harandar, and Orwena and the Harandar now join us as an allied race. Oh, I completely forgot to mention this during my live telling, but yeah, Monty Gaslow visits Orwena in her home territory, where she shows him around, and she calls Gaslow not Gaslow, no. They are close. To her, he is simply Monty.
Let me buy you a drink. No way, you buy me a drink. Now, you know what? Just give me the money.
And as I was busy editing this video to bring you the story, they've given us the Voidstorm to test as well. So the final leveling zone has been made available, and now we know what the story is going to be leading us into the Voidspire and into the final raids. As expected, it's indeed Umbric who gets us into the Voidstorm, and he needs a thingamabob from the revamped Magis's Terrace. Except Romaf is still not okay with them being in the city. Yet Lor'themar is like, look, we're losing this war against the Voidstorm. We need some way in. It's time to be risky. Let's get this done. And they're not wrong. Like, going into the Magis's Terrace almost goes terribly wrong. It almost gives the Void the upper hand, but we clean up the mess that we make, we get our relic that we need, and we gain entry into the Voidstorm with the support of the Void Elves. Going into the Voidstorm overwhelms them, because this place is just basically, it's all void, right? And one of the dialogues compares it to what happened to Draenor into Outland. So Draenor, once upon a time, got blasted by the magics of the Twisting Nether, and that transformed it into Outland. They make a comparison here, that this was a planet, it got blasted by the Void, and it turned it into the Voidstorm, Xal'atath's base of operations. Throughout the zone, we learn that Xal'atath takes control. She's taken over their High Lords, and she basically became part of the Hobbit food chain. It's very much a eat or be eaten kind of world. That's also why there's like massive PvP motivation here. They're very much about, you know, the right of the strongest and the right who gets on top. And in this case, it's Xal'atath. But not all of them are happy with her being in charge. There's also made mention about Xal'atath potentially being a mortal in the past, which gives credit to the idea that maybe Xal'atath was like Illyria once upon a time. Illyria has embraced the Void and she became more powerful, so too could this be for Xal'atath? Who is to say? There used to be a dialogue during the storyline on Karesh that made mention that Dimensius devoured Xal'atath's planet. That dialogue didn't make it into life, but perhaps that was what they were thinking back in the day. There's still quite a bit of mystery surrounding Xal'atath, her motivations, who she is, where she came from. We still do not know a whole lot, which for me personally, I was really hoping that this final zone was going to crack that open, because in my mind, it's time to learn more about Xal'atath. I need to know why she's doing what she's doing, what is she all about. At this point in time, she could either be simply wanting to eat Azeroth because power and she's hungry, or she could be the most beautiful, morally grave villain that you've ever met that's only doing this because so-and-so, and it's time to explain who she is. I will be disappointed if Xal'atath is once again floating in front of us the entire expansion like she's done in the War Within. It was fine in the War Within, it was a build-up, it was leading to somewhere, but I feel like in Midnight, they need to start explaining and they need to start locking things down. That is to say that there is still the max level campaign, and I do hope that the max level campaign is going to give us that storytelling. So what do we do learn? Well, we meet a brand new race in the Voidstorm. In this zone, we're introduced to the Dominar, and I would describe them as like mini Xal'ataths. I would describe them as mini Sire Denethrius. They're very sassy, they're very interesting, very fun written characters. Throughout the zone, as mentioned, we find out that not all the Dominar are happy with Xal'atath being in charge, and of course we provide an opportunity there. We also learn that Lofraxion, our light Dreadlord friend, is having a lot of trouble going to this planet and dealing with it. And they hint at the idea that because he is a Dreadlord and because he's so rooted in the light, that all he really had was his conviction. And that conviction quickly flows into zealotry as Lotharation, he loses control of who he was and all sense basically of what it means for this mission, as he is not happy with working together with the Dominar. Making statements like, how could you trust this creature of the void? Clearly this is going to go wrong, clearly they're going to betray us, and there is no talking sense to him, up to the point where he tries to murder the Dominar, even though Illyria is like, yo, we need this one, we need their help. So Lotharation is going off the deep end. A similar thing as to what we saw happening at the start of Midnight, right? Like the light making them more zealous, up to the point where Lotharation is going to lead us into the dungeon. And the idea behind it is we want to weaken the Voidstorm so we can get more allies into the Voidstorm, right? Like we want more allies in here. We want an army to come in here, so we need to open up the way. And there's different ways of going about it. The Dominar is giving us the sensible way, the slow, but, you know, we won't blow up Silvermoon kind of way. To which Lotharation is like, nah, we could just blow up the pillar. It will be fine. It will be great. Willing sacrifice to be made, you know, calculated risks and all that. And we try to convince him, like, Lotharation, don't do this, up to the point where we are forced to take out Lotharation. Now, killing a Dreadlord, does that mean that he went to the Twisted Nether? Does that mean he went to the Light Domain, as he was light-infused? Does that mean he went to the Shadowlands? Who is to say? Safe to say, Lotharation does not make it out, and I'm wondering how Trellian is going to respond to that news. All the same, we had to do it, because otherwise Silvermoon would have been destroyed. We open up the way for our reinforcements, and we can get our campaign going into the Voidstorm, into the raid, into Xal'atath's base of operations. A Draenei-specific questline confirms that Azeroth is not the only target of the Void or the creatures within the Voidstorm, as they've been taken captive, and the explanation is that when the Draenei were on the run from Kil'jaeden and the Burning Legion, they would hop from planet to planet. And every single time the Legion would find them again, they would hop aboard the ship and they would go to another planet. Except sometimes, some of their people were not quick enough to get back to the ship, and they were forced to leave them behind. Some of those Draenei have been left behind, and we find them here in the cages, and we meet up with them. We actually get special dialogue, like, oh, you are related to us, you are connected to us. And I'm really curious to see if that is going to go anywhere, if there's going to get like a separate storyline. For the Voidstorm, I should also make mention that there's quite an extensive storytelling with the Windrunner. So we've seen them in the intro scenario, we've seen it in the forest, we've seen it in the Arator campaign, and here too in the Voidstorm, we're now dealing with the relationship between Arator and his mother. And in this one, it's the building blocks of what's going to happen with Illyria. They do make mention that the Naru inside of her is the source of her power, which I've sent feedback on, because Illyria was most definitely able to wield the Void before she absorbed the Naru. But either way, like for Illyria, her loved ones are her building blocks. They're her reason, and she will do anything to keep them safe. She will give everything that they got. And yeah, that is definitely being pushed further and further developed. Like, okay, Illyria has been hunting here in the Voidstorm for quite a while, and these Void Elves, the moment that they enter, it's overwhelming them, it's suppressing them. It's like, oh my god, how do we survive? And Illyria is like spending so much more time here and doing so much more on her own again that, you know, you can smell what they're cooking. And of course, having to take care of Lotharation, her longtime friends, can't have been that easy. So yeah, I did wanted to make sure that you knew about that part. That, in a quick nutshell, is describing what happens on the Voidstorm, but of course there's also the side quest and learning more about the characters, the zone itself. We learn more about the PvP, because this is going to be like a max level battleground where they motivate you to do combat against the Alliance and the Hordes. And what's interesting is more in the side quest, where they make mention that they can use the Void, this planet, in order to shape things. And we go through a quest line in order to make a weapon, which had me wonder, like, is this where Xal'atath learned how to make the Blade of the Black Empire? Is that something that the old gods inherently knew how to do? Or is that some knowledge that they took from her, and is that why she lashed out? To be decided. We also read a lot about how they enjoy emotions, up to the comical, right? Like, where they're like, okay, let's take a moment and let you and I become friends for a bit. Tell me, what is your favorite food? What is your favorite drink? What do you like to do? Okay, we're friends now, right? Okay, so I'm going to stab you in the back. I'm going to betray you. Now give me your delicious emotions. This harkens back to Xal'atath in The War Within, like draining the black blood from Belenar, but also something like the old god Yasharaj with the difference, with pride and with hatred and rage, like emotions fueling their essence and their power. Again, you might hear it from my voice, I'm a big fan of the Dominar. They are a very fun race introduced. I always like the sassier characters. And yeah, hopefully we're going to find out more about Xal'atath in that max level campaign. And then we do know more, as we also have the raid and the dungeon journals. And then for the raids, because much more is known, for the raids they've decided this time around to separate them. And they made a big deal about how there's going to be 2 weeks between the Voidspire raid and the Isle of Quel'thelas, because they wanted like the story to simmer and they wanted to play through. But the storyline is already available on the alpha on like day 1. Again, keep in mind, spoilers ahead, but I'm going to assume if you're now 30 minutes into this video, you are open to know what's going to happen. So here we go. The Nightmare one seems to be on its own. So the Nightmare Beastie looks awesome, but that's a storyline we deal with the Harandar and we take care of business. Potential of going into like the Lifelands and deal with the story there. Then there's the Voidspire, the max level zone, which we haven't talked about yet, by the way, because we haven't also been able to test it yet. It's not been up on the phases at this point in time. Once we're in the raid, we also see that some of the allies that have showed up to defend the Sunwell, they're also going to turn and they're becoming zealots, right? Like they're becoming very aggressive in the way of using the lights. And then at the very bottom of the page, we can see something that's a lot of you were like, that's not a spoiler, that's to be expected. But I thought it was kind of mental to see this just day 1 in the raid journal. Alleria Windrunner is going to fall to the darkness. This is something that we've been speculating about for a really, really long time. Mainly with like the Nightborn allied scenario. We saw Alleria return to the Sunwell and accidentally unleash the Void upon it. What would happen if she did it on purpose, right? The idea that if she loses one of her anchors, one of her loved ones, that could push her over into the abyss. We have the 1000-Year War where the dialogue goes like, yeah, she could fall to madness, she could fall to the Void. We've got the Battle for Azeroth scenario brought back with the War Within, where we see Alleria fall to the Void and Cerulean dead in front of the cathedral and Arator kidnapped. I think that is what's going to happen. I think Cerulean is going to die, and that Alleria is going to fall to darkness because of it. And in her way, she's going to try and, save Cerulean or stop Xal'atath, something like that. Not only would that confirm the vision from Battle for Azeroth, it would also connect back to Arator's vision, way back when in the Burning Crusade, where he saw his father die. That was the dream that he constantly had. That is what pushed him to go and look for his parents all the way back then, right? That is my speculation, my expectation. No matter how it happens, Alleria falls to darkness and she unleashes all kinds of stuff and we need to deal with it. One of her items on the loot table is actually Locus-Walker's ribbon, so that's interesting to see. And then 2 weeks later, the Isle should open up and we return to the Sunwell. And there we have 2 bosses. One is a spawn of Alar that's been infused with the Void, so there's like Light Birdie and Void Birdie. And then the last one is Luna, which is the Naru that Alleria ate during Legion. There was the seat of the Triumvirate and a corrupted Naru that was been singing there, and Alleria absorbed it into her body, like a massive step on her road into this Void hero. That Naru is now out. That Naru is connected to the Sunwell and turning it into the Darkwell, because you can't call it the Nightwell, because you already have one of those, so they call it the Darkwell. And it's midnight's approaching, darkness is out there, what's gonna happen? Anyone's guess. But that seems to be the first season for the story of Midnight. That seems to be what's gonna happen, and then it's anyone's guess what flows after that, right? But things definitely look dire for the Sunwell. So where we're going to go from there is anyone's guess, and it's really hard to say. Like, for all we know, this is the end of the big Renilush battle. I doubt it, but you don't know. The Arathi Empire is waiting if we need some light people in there. Yrl and Alternate Draenor, I don't know if they're going to bring it in, considering that we don't see anything from the Everbloom, but I would love to see Yrl and the Alternate Army of the Light come in as well. Like, the Light Zealots, they would make such a perfect addition for this storyline. In the meantime, there is the motivation of Xal'atath that needs to be explained. There's Alleria apparently falling to the Void. What is going to happen in that Voidstorm storyline? What about Queen Zul'jara? Are the Naga truly gathering power for her? And does that mean that she could show up and try to play some part? I would imagine that Zul'jara is not exactly looking favorable upon beings of the Void. And Zul'jara, but at the same time, Zul'jara has always been about, who has a lot of power. She imagines herself to be with Sargeras. Could she imagine herself to be with Zul'jara? Or with Xal'atath even? Who is to say? What about Arator? Like, a lot of this is building up. Like, even at his tattoos, where he has like a light dragon and a dark dragon on his skull. the child of Shadow and Light, was once upon a time prophesied to be ill in a storm rage. What if they're going to use the prophecy for Arator now? What is his role going to be? Are we going to go into space? Are we going to deal with Renlash out there? Or is the battle going to stay on Azeroth? And of course, the inevitable return of the Titans that are going to return to Azeroth for some reason. But that is next expansion talk, right? With that, I think I'm going to end my rant. And like I said, I'm going to make more detailed videos where we go slowly through the zones. I show you all the quests, hopefully also all the side quests, full playthroughs, dungeons, delves, all the good stuff. All that and more is on the horizon. For now, thank you very much for watching, everyone. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe if you did. And until next time, see ya!